Hi, my name's Keith Cooper from Northlight Images, and this video is about using the Colour Optimiser settings for the Canon PRO-310. Now it also applies to the older PRO-300, PRO-1100, whole load of other Canon printers that have a gloss optimizer or colour optimizer clear coat as their ink set. What is it? It's a clear coating. It is an ink, i.e. it comes in a cartridge, so it gets used up fairly quickly, that you can apply when printing. It has quite a variety of effects. It reduces gloss differential, which is where if you look at a picture you can see some parts are glossier than others. It has no real relevance if you print on art papers and the like. It is really for photo papers. It's been around for a while. I looked at it when I reviewed the PRO-300, now 10 years ago now nearly, and it's part of the ink set. You think, well, do I really need it? Some images you might decide you don't need it. Now I've got a load of test images here. I'm just going to go through some of these. It's quite tricky to show the benefits of it. In fact, black and white shows it up more. This is why I've got black and white and colour test images. And I'll show you the examples here and cut some in so you can actually see a bit more detail of what I'm talking about. It's quite tricky to photograph as well. You need to get the lighting right. And that's because the ink set as it stands without this Colour Optimiser is already pretty good. So you're adding a layer of extra quality on top of already pretty good, which necessarily means that it's not going to show up that much. Depends very much on the paper itself. So anyway, let's have a look. In the settings, and I printed all of these using the Canon PPL software. I printed the black and white ones using the black and white print mode because it gets used for that, and the colour ones printed normally with profiles I'd made on this, a fairly standard luster paper, not a Canon paper. The effect of this will vary on the paper. So it is worth experimenting if you're going to use a particular paper for a lot of prints. Also, the rate at which it's used up varies, but that comes under the settings and I'll show that. Now, the basic settings available is auto, and that's where the printer decides where to apply it. As the ink droplets go onto the paper, it can add extra droplets of the clear coat, mixes in and gives a better surface finish. Now, I'm not going to the lengths of actually getting a microscope out and looking at this because the clear ones are not going to be very obvious because they tend to spread out anyway. So it's not like ink droplets where if you zoom in you can actually see them on a print. There's auto, there is overall. That means it applies it everywhere to the whole image, over to the edge of the paper as well. Now that counts as a borderless print to some extent for the Colour Optimiser, and it does mean that some overspray is going to go somewhere into the waste pad on the printer. There is also printed areas. Now this is a new one, and this is one I remember asking for quite a few years ago when I first looked at this, which says basically apply it to the area of the print. Do not apply it to my borders. I'll show that as well because that is, you can see that that's a new one. And then there's none. If you can turn it off completely. For some papers it may look better, but in general I think the auto setting is probably going to work the best. Where I see the differences are in the highlights. So where you have got very low ink levels or bits of paper white in your image, it helps stop them from standing out. Now, a lot of that depends on the paper itself. I've got a UV pen here, and if I just shine the UV at it, I can see the optical brightness. Now, I'm hoping this will show up a bit in the video. The optical brightness are just what makes it glow like this, gives it a nice whiteness. Maybe not what you want for archival use, but you know, there's nothing wrong with OBAs as such, optical brightening agents. So I can see here that the actual clear coat doesn't glow or anything like that in UV, so it doesn't really contribute anything to colour. It's, from what I can see, it is indeed clear. I can't see any real differences from when I'm doing profiling and stuff, whether I've applied it or not. There will be measurable differences, but visible differences, not really. It's all about the perception of how prints look. And the examples I've got here are some photos I set up using this Ilfilux lamp that I use for just general print viewing. This is set, by the way, to 4000K just to match the lighting in the room here. When I'm actually doing the photos or testing, I'll have it at 5000 or 6500, probably 5000 for print viewing and print testing. And it's also quite set to quite dim here. But that's just a video thing, just trying to get things to match a bit. In terms of settings, first of all, this is with it set to overall. Now, if I look at this, I can see a particular sort of reflectiveness, and I've angled the light to try and get a bit of a reflection of it. That's with the coating applied overall. If I go to the next, which is auto, you can see there is a subtle change, and that suggests that with it set to auto, there are more areas where it is not applying it. It still seems to apply it fairly generally, but obviously the distribution of it varies. Now, that's going to be very paper dependent. If the reflectance and the surface look of the prints are important to you, you're going to need to do some experiments with this, with images, just to see what the differences are in the settings. Just because they show up here on this printer, on this paper, doesn't mean necessarily that you'll see it or even that it will matter. That's that. But lastly, if I turn it off, we can see quite a difference. In particular, look at the A4 over on the left. You can see the black ink is a lot more reflective. If I just go back to there, you can see a difference. Now, these are taken at the same exposure, same place, nothing else moved, camera set up just doing that. So you are seeing real differences. But I have had to set this up to get the light at glancing angles and things to see it. But this is one of those things that when you see it, if you see it in a print, you can't unsee it. So that's for those. What about colour? Now, I've used my standard test print once again. And if I look at these prints visually, what differences can I see? Well, fortunately, I've written on the corners as to what they are, because otherwise it's not that obvious. Where you do see slight differences are certainly in the black and white. This is black and white printed as a colour image using a profile. Not the same as the black and white mode printing here. So it does look slightly different there. But in general, there is not much difference between them. I would say yes, I can see if in moving it about, and this obviously won't be visible on the video, in moving it about, I can see that where there isn't any, I can see different thicknesses of ink have been applied. So there's an image here where I can see, if I get it right, you can see that. Now, I've got some photos of this as well. So there we are. That's with it set for overall. If I change it to auto, subtly different again. And if I change it to none, now you can see the difference. In particular, look at that dark image second in from the left. You can see quite easily the differences in ink density on it. So it does show up like that. That's with that. That leaves effectively, and here's the other end of the image. Look at the sky, for example, and the dark and the nice strong blue sky. That changes. There's auto and there's none. And there is once again a distinct difference between none and auto. So that's set with those. Now, got one last one that shows up. And here we have one this is printed on the printed area only. But this image goes to the edge of the page, so you can't see anything. It's only when I shrunk the size of the image to print it with a big border, I can now see, and this one really is quite clear. There we go. It took quite an effort to photograph this. I can see a rectangle of shininess, and that is the printed area only one. So that has saved putting any of the gloss optimizer into this large border, and means that if you're printing this, the gloss optimizer is only being used on the printed image area. Now, there are some subtle differences when you look at it in very light areas between this and when it's set to auto, when it's set to clear coat the whole thing. Nothing that I can pin down and tell you exactly what the differences are, but they are there. That's on this one paper. And I would say if you're going to test other papers, do test them just to have a look. So that's it. The picture here, that shows it a bit. In general, use it on papers like this. There are papers, or I should say there were papers, because I spotted this a few times ago in the past when I tested the PRO-300 and tested the PRO-1100. There were some images where I thought the clear coat did not contribute positively to the image. It sort of, the colours weren't quite so good. Now, this is a new ink set in the 310 and the 1100 and also the newer larger format printers from Canon. And it appears that the Colour Optimiser works even better with this new ink set. This, incidentally, is not a varnish. Do not think of this like applying a varnish to your canvases or something like that. It is not a protective coat. It is nothing like that. It is about visual differences. It's about how the images look with different angles of lighting. Yeah. Is it slightly darker, blacks compared to... If it is, then I need to set up a more careful comparison. But anyway, that's an overview of what the clear coating does. So yes, it's a good idea, but if you're doing pictures like this, certainly if you're doing it on non-Canon papers, ones you've got profiles for, then test it and see whether it makes a difference, whether it doesn't make a difference, and whether it's an important one at that. Anyway, if you've got any questions, please do let me know. I will be doing my full review of the PRO-310 as soon as possible. As many people will know, we're in the process of moving home. We get the keys later this week, so new videos may be a little intermittent, but I will come back to this. So thanks for watching. All the usual like and subscribe, please, if you've got this far into the video. And thanks for watching. Bye.